the evening of December 9, 1914, a fire broke out at the West Orange Laboratory Complex in New Jersey, the sprawling industrial campus that Thomas Edison had built as the world's first true research and development facility. The fire started in the film room, where highly combustible materials were stored, and within minutes it had spread beyond control. 10 buildings burned through the night. The complex that Edison had spent decades building, the place where the phonograph had been refined, where motion picture technology had been developed, where hundreds of ongoing experiments lived in various states of progress, was consumed by flames that shot so high they were visible from New York City, across the river. Edison's son, Charles, frantic and helpless, found his father standing outside in the cold, watching the fire. Charles was terrified of what this moment might do to the old man. His father was 67 years old. The financial loss was estimated at nearly $1 million, a catastrophic sum. A lifetime of work was burning. He approached his father carefully, braced for despair. Thomas Edison turned to his son with the light of the fire reflected in his eyes, and he said, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." And then, the next morning, before the ash had fully cooled, he said, "We're rebuilding." Within 3 weeks, the facility was operational again. Within a month, Edison had delivered a speech to his workers that was more energized than any he had given before the fire. That is the man we are going to talk about today. Not the myth. Not the simplified inventor on a postage stamp. The real human being, flawed, obsessive, occasionally ruthless, endlessly, stubbornly, magnificently unwilling to stop. Thomas Alva Edison was born on February 11, 1847, in Milan, Ohio, the youngest of 7 children. From the very beginning, his mind operated differently from the minds around him. At school, he asked too many questions. He could not sit still for lessons that moved too slowly for the speed at which his curiosity traveled. His teacher, the Reverend G.B. Engel, reportedly described young Thomas as addled, confused, disorganized, unteachable. After only 3 months of formal schooling, Edison was removed from the classroom. His mother, Nancy, a former schoolteacher herself, was furious. Not at her son, at the school. She took Thomas's education into her own hands, teaching him at home with a ferocity and a belief in her boy's intelligence that would shape his entire life. Years later, Edison said, "My mother was the making of me. She was so true, so sure of me, and I felt I had someone to live for, someone I must not disappoint." Notice what is happening here. A child told by an institution that he is unteachable. A child whose mind doesn't fit the mold. And one person, one single person, who looks at that child and sees not a problem but a promise. Nancy Edison saw her son clearly when the world could not. Most of us have been told, at some point, by someone or something, that we are not the right shape for success. That our mind, or our manner, or our background disqualifies us from the table. That we are, in some important way, addled. Edison's first lesson is this: the institution's verdict is not the final verdict. The classroom that cannot contain you is not a judgment of your capacity. It may be a judgment of its own limitations. Now we have to talk about the number. Because you cannot tell the story of Thomas Edison without confronting the number that defines his entire philosophy of achievement. 10,000. That is the approximate number of attempts Edison and his team made to develop a commercially viable electric light bulb before they succeeded. 10,000 experiments. 10,000 variations of filament material, vacuum pressure, glass shape, electrical current. 10,000 times the bulb either failed to light, burned out immediately, or produced results that were unusable. This number has been disputed by some historians. Some say it was closer to 1,000, others suggest the experiments numbered in the hundreds for specific filament materials. But Edison himself spoke of the process in terms that make the spirit of 10,000 absolutely accurate. It was iterative, exhausting, systematic, and enormous in scale. And it is what he said about those failures that has echoed through every subsequent generation of achievers, entrepreneurs, artists, and scientists who needed permission to keep going. When a reporter asked Edison how it felt to have failed 10,000 times, Edison looked at him with what we can only imagine was genuine bewilderment and said, I have not failed 10,000 times. I have successfully found 10,000 ways that will not work. Read that again. Slowly. He did not experience failure as failure. He experienced it as data. Each unsuccessful experiment was not a step backward. It was a step in the only direction available to a person who genuinely does not know which path leads to the answer, forward into information. This reframe is not a motivational poster slogan. It is a sophisticated epistemological position. It is a way of understanding how knowledge is actually built, not through inspiration, not through genius arriving fully formed, but through the patient, relentless, systematic elimination of what does not work until what does work is all that remains. Here is where the Edison story becomes even more interesting, and where most retellings miss the point. Edison's persistence was not random. It was not simply a man banging his head against a wall with greater frequency than everyone else. His persistence was organized. It was structured. It was, in fact, industrialist. Edison invented the research laboratory. Before Menlo Park, his first great laboratory complex, opened in New Jersey in 1876, invention was largely a solitary, accidental, unstructured affair. Discoveries happened when a single brilliant person stumbled upon something unexpected. Edison changed all of that. He built a facility specifically designed for systematic experimentation. He hired a team of researchers, he called them his muckers, who worked in rotating shifts, around the clock, testing, measuring, documenting, discarding, and trying again. He maintained meticulous records of every single experiment. Nothing was wasted. Every failure was catalogued and studied, because a failure that is not understood is a failure that will be repeated. He famously said, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." This is often quoted as a celebration of hard work. But it is more precise than that. It is a statement about the nature of achievement. The inspiration, the spark, the idea, the vision, is real and necessary and valuable. But it is the smallest part of the equation. The 99% is the grinding, methodical, failure-rich, data-gathering, try-again-tomorrow work that transforms a spark into a flame. What Edison understood that most dreamers do not is that the idea is the easy part. The idea is exciting and energizing and free. The idea costs nothing and requires no courage and produces no calluses. It is the 1,000 attempts after the idea, the ones that don't work, the ones that almost work, the ones that work for 30 seconds and then collapse, that separate the people who merely dream from the people who build. Let's sit with failure for a moment, because our relationship with it is the hinge on which everything turns. We are taught, from our earliest years, that failure is bad, that it signals inadequacy, that it should be avoided, and when it cannot be avoided, it should be hidden. Report cards and performance reviews and job interviews all send the same message. Show me your successes. Minimize your failures. Present the edited version. Edison lived by the opposite code. He displayed his failed experiments. He discussed them openly. He built systems to capture them, learn from them, and build upon them. In his laboratory notebooks, which survive and have been studied extensively by historians, you find page after page of careful documentation of what went wrong, alongside hypotheses about why, alongside plans for what to try next. Failure, for Edison, was not an interruption of the process. It was the process. And here is the liberating truth embedded in that understanding. If failure is the process, then you are never really failing. You are always, at every moment, working. You are gathering information. You are getting closer. The only way to truly fail, the only failure that is final and fatal, is to stop. Edison did not stop. Not after 10 attempts. Not after 100. Not after 1,000. Not after his laboratory burned to the ground. Not at age 67. Not ever, really, until his body made the decision for him. He died in 1931, aged 84, holding a total of 1,093 United States patents. More patents than any individual in American history at that time. Not because he was the most naturally gifted inventor who ever lived, but because he tried more than anyone else. He failed more than anyone else. He documented more, iterated more, persisted more. Volume of attempts times quality of learning equals eventual breakthrough. That was Edison's formula. It was not magic. It was mathematics. I want to be honest with you about something, because motivational stories that skip this part are doing you a disservice. Persistence is lonely. When Edison was deep in the years of experimentation on the light bulb, when he had tried 500 things and none of them had worked, when he had tried 1,000 things and none of them had worked, the world around him was not universally supportive. Investors grew impatient. Rivals mocked him publicly. Newspapers ran articles questioning whether he had lost his touch. There were moments of genuine crisis. Financial pressure was constant. The gap between his vision and his results, during those long middle stretches, was enormous. And the most dangerous place any persistent person inhabits is the middle. The beginning has excitement. The end has vindication. The middle has only faith. Faith that the next attempt might be the one. Faith that the data you are gathering is leading somewhere even when you cannot see where. Faith that the process is trustworthy even when the results are not yet visible. Edison held that faith. Not because he was superhuman. Not because he was immune to doubt or discouragement, but because his identity was so completely rooted in the act of trying that stopping was simply not a category his mind recognized as an option. He did not ask himself, "Should I keep going?" That question never arose. He only ever asked, "What do I try next?" There is tremendous freedom in removing the first question. When quitting is not on the table, when it is simply not a path your mind walks down, the entire energy that was spent debating whether to continue gets redirected toward how to continue. The decision is already made. Only the execution remains. Edison's light bulb changed the world. But the light bulb was not his greatest gift. His greatest gift was the proof that the world could be changed by a person willing to try enough times. Every laboratory that exists today, every research and development facility, every startup garage, every university science department running experiment after experiment in pursuit of cures and technologies and solutions, is operating in a tradition that Edison formalized. The tradition of systematic persistence. The tradition of treating failure as data. The tradition of building structures that support the long attempt. And his personal legacy, the patents, the phonograph, the motion picture camera, the improvements to the telegraph, the electrical power distribution systems that lit up entire cities, all of it traces back to a single unwavering commitment. One more try. That is the inheritance he left to every human being who has ever stood at the edge of giving up and wondered whether it was worth continuing. One more try. Not 10,000 more tries. Not a promise that the next attempt will succeed. Simply, one more. And then, if that one doesn't work, one more after that. And so on. And so on. Until the answer reveals itself, as it always does, to the person still standing in the laboratory when everyone else has gone home. I want you to think of your life as a laboratory. Not a performance. Not a resume. Not a highlight reel. A laboratory. A place where experiments are designed, conducted, documented, and learned from. A place where failure is not a verdict, but a variable. A place where the question is never "Am I good enough?" but always "What does this result tell me about what to try next?" You are working on something. Maybe it is a business. Maybe it is a relationship. Maybe it is a creative work, a physical goal, a career change, a recovery, a version of yourself that you have been trying to become for longer than you want to admit. And somewhere along the way, you have probably encountered a number of failed attempts that has started to feel like evidence against you. Like the universe is sending a message. Like the accumulation of things that didn't work is a sign that the thing itself won't work. I want to offer you Edison's reframe. That accumulation is not evidence against you. It is evidence of you. It is proof that you are in the laboratory. That you are doing the work. That you have not confused thinking about trying with actually trying. Every attempt that does not produce the result you wanted produces something else: information, understanding, refinement, a narrowing of the space between where you are and where you are going. The 10,000th attempt that finally works does not succeed despite the 9,999 that came before it. It succeeds because of them. Your failures are not your story. They are your method. The laboratory is yours. The experiments are ongoing. The answer is somewhere inside the attempts you have not yet made. Go back in. Try again. One more time.